Hello, everyone. Welcome to Meade County Catholic Radio Talk Show Discussions. I'm Deacon Greg Bevin. In the Lord's Prayer, Jesus reminds us to ask Him for His strength each day. Our guest this month reminds us how precious each day is and how Jesus is always there for us in times when we need Him the most. Vesta and her husband Rote have been long-time residents of our community and faithful members of Ekron Baptist Church. Vesta is a teacher at Painville Elementary School, and Rote is the owner-operator of Parish Implement in Brandenburg. The story you're about to hear is about a very rare, painful, and disabling illness called Guillain-Barre syndrome, better known as GBS. It is a very rare autoimmune disease which attacks the nervous system. Its cause is unknown, and it is life-threatening in many cases. Today we will hear about this dreadful disease and how it suddenly changed the lives of Vesta, Rote, and their family overnight. But the main story will not necessarily be on the disease itself, but rather on the power and the love of her family and community, and most importantly, on the merciful and comforting love of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Vesta will acknowledge that she's always felt the love of Jesus in her heart, but for the first and most important time in her life, she actually felt Him hold her in His arms. We'll be right back.
God relates to us in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 11, that He will tend His flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in His arms and carries them to His heart. If the story you are about to hear touches your heart, drop us a note at Meade County Catholic Radio, P.O. Box 40, Painville, Kentucky, 40157. Our shows are intended to teach, inform, and strengthen our faith in Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. That's Meade County Catholic Radio, P.O. Box 40, Painville, Kentucky, 40157. Your support is always appreciated.
Welcome back to Meade County Catholic Radio Talk Show Discussions. Vesta and Rote, I want to thank you for being with us on the show today. You know, I have read a lot of testimonials, and without question, this one is the most faith-filled and spirit-filled one that I have been blessed to hear, and we thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
And Greg, we just thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my testimony today.
Thank you.
You know, before we get started into this wonderful story, let's talk a little bit about where the Smith family was prior to April of 2019. Tell us a little bit about the Smith family.
Well, Greg, we had very active lives, and it involved spending a lot of time with our 3 married children, their spouses, and our 5 precious grandchildren. And as you mentioned, I am a teacher at Painville Elementary, where I've taught kindergarten for the past 24 years. And I am also a Sunday school teacher to the young married couples class at Ekron Baptist Church, where Rote also serves as a deacon.
Very good. We also serve in the motorcycle ministry, which is called Heaven Saints Motorcycle Ministry. And God has blessed us, you know, with the use of a motorcycle as a tool, which we try to take what He's given us, and it's been a tool that we can get out and pray with people at gas stations, go to bike rallies, to bike ride, charity rides, and whatsoever. So we've been blessed to have a we enjoy to ride motorcycles and have met many people out on the road, and also our chapters, Christians that we ride with, and just to grow our faith and to strengthen us and make us bolder.
Yes.
Yeah, Rhoda, I'm very nervous to ride a motorcycle, so I don't. That's a good thing that I don't, but I do know several guys that are in that. And, I think the interesting thing about it, in our minds and our history, we think of motorcycle guys as real rough and tumble and carefree and careless, but that's not the case with this group. And I think it's so unique that you show people how you can find and touch Jesus in so many different ways in life and spread his word. And I think it's a wonderful ministry.
And there's as a ministry, it's just all about relationships.
Sure.
And you have to, just like in any other ministry, you start with people, and you have to get their confidence and just show them Christ in you, and it's a relationship.
Absolutely.
Before you can speak to them.
Absolutely. Well, Vesta, it's the 1st of April, 2019. You're beginning spring break, actually.
Yes.
And you and your mother decided to make a special trip out west.
Yes, Greg, my mom and I, we always travel to see Kurt, Charity, and Evie every spring and fall break. And we normally stay 4 or 5 days. But little did I know that on this trip, I would be staying in Oklahoma for 34 days.
Well, you anticipated the drive to take only about 12 hours, which is a long drive, of course. But after driving about 8 hours in heavy rains, you decided to stop for the evening and get some rest before making the final leg of your trip. But it wasn't a restful night.
No.
It was a restless night. And the next morning, you felt that something was just not right.
When I woke up, I noticed that, my feet and my hands were tingling. But I didn't really think anything about it because I just thought, well, I was just really tense from driving in the heavy rain for 8 hours the day before. So, I still went down and I ate breakfast. I packed the car, and I even drove the car to a nearby gas station. But in just that very brief time, my hands went from tingling and my feet went from tingling to being numb. And typically I drive the entire time, but I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, you're going to have to drive because I can't feel my feet. So, on the rest of the way of the trip, I just remember just not feeling right. And just, I don't know. I didn't really think I was sick, but it just wasn't right.
Mm-hmm. Well, you did finally arrive to your son, daughter-in-law, and your beautiful 2.5-year-old granddaughter, Evie, and they're home, but things worsened quickly.
Oh, yes. It only took 4 hours for us to get to Kurt and Charity's house. And in that 4-hour time, I went from being able to drive the car at the gas station to hardly being able to get out of the car. And then when I did, I had difficulty walking. I had to consciously tell myself to walk. Every time I would move my legs, I would have to just say, walk, walk, walk. And they handed me Evie, and I almost dropped her to the ground because I had no strength in my arms. And this all happened within that 4-hour period. So we immediately thought I was having a stroke, and I was taken to a heart and stroke hospital, and I was there most of the day, and they ran all kinds of tests on me. And finally they came back and they said, there's nothing wrong with your heart. You haven't had a stroke. And they told me, they said, go home and enjoy your time with your son and his family.
Mm. Well, Rote, you and of course, Vesta, you as well as parents, when we raise children, one of our big concerns is at some hour of the night we may receive some call about some sickness or one of the children being involved in an accident of some sort. But in this particular call that you received from Vesta, I'm sure it must have caught you totally unexpected.
Greg, it sure did catch me off guard because Vesta's very good about, I just got a phone call. It was about 7:30 in the morning on a Monday morning, and just typical of her, she was calling. I thought just check in, knew I was getting ready to go to work, thought she had time. And when I got the phone call, and the first words when I heard her speak, she said, you need to come to Oklahoma. And it was a tone of voice I'd never heard before, of being scared. And I knew right then there wasn't no, I'd ask no questions much. I said, I'm coming. So, turn of events, I had Lauren, our daughter. I called her. She got me a flight scheduled for about 2:30. I don't remember. So I went on and worked, tried to tie up all the ends I could, quick as I could. Went home, packed a duffel bag. Thought maybe I was going to be gone 2 or 3 days. Went to E-Town. Lauren gave me a ride to the airport. Arrived in Oklahoma City approximately 8 o'clock our time. And to find Vesta pretty much ICU with her mom and my son and daughter-in-law. And very little strength in her arms. Barely could raise her arms at that time. And just so much happened so quick, and just I don't know how to describe it, but I know we were there for a while. I didn't know what a while was. I didn't know if a while was a week. I thought I had that in mind. Maybe this was a few, some medicine, and this would be turning the corner a day or two, and we'll be heading back to Kentucky, how it was, in the car and back and see the doctors in Kentucky. But it turned out to be just a little longer trip than that we expected. And just kind of where we're at that point.
Yeah.
And the whole time, in that point, you're back to, it's so important that my parents had me in church when I was young, then grew up in the church, and I married a Christian woman, and all this prayer just comes, and just for strength, and that's what I had to lean on. Just, I know God was in control, and that's what I had to lean on. Still scary.
Sure, I bet.
I can't think how it would be if I didn't have him and knew what Festus.
I know in a lot of the shows we've done that involves husband and wife and so forth, the hardest thing about husbands and men is that we're fixers, and you obviously recognize that in your business, and we'll just fix that and go on, but this wasn't a fix-it thing for you, so I can imagine how dreadful this must have been for you. Vesta, normally, and Rote kind of alluded to that, normally the common illnesses that we experience come on rather slowly. Right. We kind of have a little advance notice, not feeling real well and so forth. But in this case, the progression and the speed of the symptoms that attacked you were very, very quick.
Yes.
Talk about how you tried to process what was going on around you at that time.
I had no idea what was going on. Like you said, it happened so fast that, I'd just been in the hospital the day before, spent most of the day there, and they said nothing was wrong with me. But as the night progressed, I became weaker and weaker. And I would try to move in the bed, and I couldn't move. My arms and my legs just lay there. I just could barely move. And I knew right then something was wrong. And then that's when I did call Rote. And I just told him, I said, you need to get out here quickly. You've got to get to Oklahoma as soon as you can, because I wanted him by my side. I had my mom, and I love her more than anything, but I also needed Rote.
Sure.
I just needed him to tell me it's going to be okay. And, we all knew at that moment that I was going to have to go to the hospital, but I couldn't even get out of bed. Kurt and Charity each had to grab one of my arms, lift me up, and carry me to the car. And it took us 45 minutes to go get to the hospital, a different hospital. And, I couldn't even sit up. In that 45 minutes, I couldn't sit up. And when they put me in the wheelchair to take me into the ER, by then I couldn't even hold my head up. And, I'd also developed a cough. And that's going to be part of what's going to happen to me later. But, people say to me, they're like, are you upset that you were in Oklahoma? Do you never want to go back there again? And I said, absolutely not. I said, this hospital is exactly where God needed to be, me to be, exactly where I need to be treated. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, that you were very fortunate, according to your testimonial, the ER doctor that you saw that night diagnosed very quickly that your nervous system was being attacked by the GBS disease. Mm-hmm. you recall him advising your daughter-in-law, Charity, to just Google the Guillain-Barre syndrome. A couple minutes later, she left the room. She knew, didn't she?
Yes.
What may be lying ahead of you.
Yeah, like you said, within 5 minutes, the ER doctor diagnosed me with GBS. And that is a miracle in itself, because only 1 in 100,000 people get this disease. Or like my mother likes to tell, 10 in a million people. And when you say it that way, that's big. That's big. But, when the ER doctor diagnosed me, excuse me, he told me that I was going to be admitted to the hospital. And I asked him, well, for how long? And, he said, well, GBS usually attacks for 7 days. Well, I knew I was sick, but I should have realized when he used the word attacks that I was going to be really sick. But, still, I thought, they were just going to give me a shot, a little bit of medicine, and I thought, okay, in a day or two, I'm going to be okay. But at that point, he wrote Guillain-Barre syndrome on a whiteboard in that ER room, and he told Charity, he said, you need to Google this. And I noticed that in a couple of minutes, she did get up and she left the room, and she later told me that it's because she started crying when she started reading about what was going to happen to me. And after that, I don't remember very much until I was being hooked up to machines in the ICU room. And I am just so, so glad that nobody told me what was about to happen to me, what I was about to face.
Well, within just a few days, you were totally paralyzed from neck down, put on a ventilator, a feeding tube, and in excruciating pain and unable to communicate with anyone except God. And then, as you mentioned in your testimonial, one of your favorite Bible stories entered your mind. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I have always loved the story where God parts the Red Sea. That's when the Israelites were being chased by the Egyptians, and it looked like they were trapped, and there was no escape from them. And then God, in his mighty power, just opened up the Red Sea. I mean, he does stuff like that all the time. Things that we think it's impossible. He just does it. I don't want to say he thinks out of the box, because that's what we do. God doesn't do that. He knows. But I love that. And that story's always given me hope when things do seem impossible. And I had to cling to that. And every morning, because I could only pray to God, I would pray to him and I would say, God, all you have to do is just say the word. Just say the word, and I'm healed. I will get up out of this bed, and I will walk. And I would wait, and I'd wait, and then I'd say, it's not today. Today's not the day. And, that's the story of the Red Sea is what I would cling to. I'd say, okay, if God can do that, he can get me through this day. And that's what I had to do. It got so bad that I would have to pray to God just to give me strength and the faith to get through the next minute. I couldn't even think about an hour or even the day. It was, Lord Jesus, please just give me the strength to get through just this day. And normally, GBS attacks people for 7 days. It attacked my body for 30 days. And for those 30 days, God was the only one that I could communicate with. And you know what, Greg? He never left me.
Well, when things looked like they couldn't get any worse, they only intensified. As you said, it was then that you experienced the presence of your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, in a way you had never experienced him before. When we come back, the amazing story of how you, your faith, and Jesus Christ embraced each other. Don't go away.
We hope you are enjoying this month's show, Discussions, on Meade County Catholic Radio, 95.3 FM. We want to thank Vesta and Rote Smith for sharing their love for Jesus and their faith in His healing power. We also want to thank Karen and Doug Stiff, Nancy and Ed Tate, Karen and Tom Beanot, Vernon Pike, Cindy and Dustin Humphrey, Laura and Brandon Simpson, and Stonegate Realty in memory of Mickey Chisholm, and our friends at WMMG Brandenburg for making this show possible. Now back to the second half of our show.
Welcome back to Discussions and our guest, Vesta and Rote Smith. Vesta, as if you and your family had not been through enough already, having pneumonia 3 times, a collapsed lung, and 3 near-death episodes involving your heart and blood pressure, your ICU doctor requested a procedure that the nurses feared you would not be able to endure. You knew then that your only hope rested in the hands of God.
You know, I don't remember a whole lot that happened in Oklahoma, and everybody has told me that that is a true blessing from God. But on this particular episode, I can remember it vividly. The ICU doctor had wanted me to have an hour MRI, and it was going to be 3 hours long. And I'm not really conscious, but I can hear everything. And the nurses are throwing a fit, telling him that there's no way that I'll live through a 3-hour MRI. So he finally got it down to an hour and a half, and they still weren't happy with him. They were still saying, you can't do this to her. You cannot do this to her. And I didn't know what an MRI was, but I was scared to death. And they rolled me down, I guess, to the place where they give the MRI. And I remember opening my eyes and seeing a nurse on the bed with me, breathing for me. She had a handheld device, and she was counting and squeezing it, and she was breathing for me. And at this point, I am just petrified, and I just keep praying, dear Jesus, please be with me. Give me peace. I was just pleading with him. And Greg, when they got me down to the MRI room, and remember, when I tell you all this, I am totally, completely paralyzed from the neck down. They lifted me off of my bed, and when they laid me in that MRI machine, when I laid back, it was as if I was laying on a human chest. And then I feel arms come around me and squeeze me. And then I heard the voice, it's okay, I'm here with you. Jesus was holding me. He was squeezing me. I was feeling him, and I was paralyzed. I felt such peace at that moment. I went to sleep. And if anybody's had an MRI, you know it is extremely loud. But I went sound asleep. And every once in a while, the nurses would wake me and say, are you okay? Of course, I couldn't speak. I would just blink my eyes. But at that moment, when they would wake me, I would realize where I was, and I would panic, and I would say, Jesus, don't leave me, don't leave me, don't leave me. And those arms would squeeze me tighter. And he would say, I'm here. Don't worry. I'm here. And I've never felt such love and peace in my life. It was indescribable. And you know, I know that I experienced what Paul wrote in Philippians 4:7 when he said, and the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and mind through Christ Jesus. And there was another time that I was in such excruciating pain, I said, I'm done. I can't take any more. And as I was laying there, I made peace with God. I confessed any sin that I could think of. And then I told him, I said, please forgive me of any that maybe I'm not thinking of. And oh my gosh, I didn't fear death at all. I was ready. And I knew the next breath that I took that I was going to be face to face with Jesus. Well, a couple breaths later, I opened my eyes and I was still in the ICU room. And I'll tell you, I was not very happy about that. I was ready to be with Jesus. I yearned for that. And through these two experiences, I have realized that God's peace is supernatural and it's unexplainable. And they have changed me. These two experiences have changed me. And I knew then and I know now that no matter what happens to me, at that point I knew whether I lived, whether I died, whether I was going to remain paralyzed for the rest of my life, or whether God chose to heal me, I was going to be okay. Because I had actually been laying in the arms of Jesus. He was holding me and telling me, don't worry, I am here.
Beautiful.
I get choked up every time I say that. I've heard the story over and over and even repeated it, and my eyes leak a little bit every time.
Yeah, they sweat a little bit every time, yeah. When Shirley and I read her testimonial, both of our eyes got to sweating. But, what a wonderful story. And Rote, she was fighting one battle. You were, and your family were fighting another. I can't imagine the stress and the pain that you and your family were experiencing during this time. How important, and I know you felt this, but how important were the prayers that Vesta, that you and the whole family were blanketed with? Vesta actually felt the arms of Jesus, but you all had to feel the prayers coming from your communities around you. How did it give you and your family strength to walk this path along the side of the wife that you love so dearly?
Well, I hope this answer is sufficient, but I come up with some things I'd written down, and one of them was, this was the biggest bump that I'd hit in my life. I mean, this was something that I couldn't fix. You used that earlier. And as men, like you said, we like to think we can take care of the problem, or we're supposed to take care of the problem. But no medicine. It was, but I did know who could fix it. And it was God that created us. And I had that to stand on. And that had to be my prayer. That had to be my thought all the time. I knew Vesta's past. I've been with her 40 years. I knew she was a Christian just by her prayers, just by her Bible study, by her you know your wife, or you should anyway, 40 years. And so that played in a part that I knew, even if death was the answer, that it was God's plan. And that I had to keep reminding myself, now this is not a one-time prayer. There was a lot of time that the nurses would all come in for x-rays, whatever it was, that I would leave the room and go down the hall of the ICU and just look out the windows and just pray and just keep reminding myself on and on about, I know her destination, and God, this is your plan, and it's for your glory, good or bad. For me, good or bad, but it's all about Him, not us.
Yeah.
And he gave me peace over that. Yeah. Now I had to come back to it. I'm not saying it stuck very long sometimes, but I had to come back to that prayer and be reminded. Every
day we pray the Lord's Prayer. That's the hardest part. Give us this day our daily bread. We have to go to Him, and then we have to accept it, and that's the scary part. Yeah.
And there was quite a bit of prayer. Just from our friends and family, our church family. That is so important in these times. I just had a few little instances that I'm not going to mention names because we've had so many people. I wouldn't hurt anybody's feelings, but we had a good Christian. We've got a Christian friend that rides a motorcycle ministry with us, and she pretty much insisted right from early. She called me and says, you've got to read Psalms 31 over every day.
Psalm 91.
91, I don't know.
Sorry, it looks the same. It looks the same.
31 over,
That's right.
Psalms 91, I apologize.
Yes.
But, so I did. Because I'm kind of afraid of the gal anyway. I didn't want her to, I didn't want to laugh.
You want to pay attention, that's right, yeah.
And so, I would get a text from her or a call every day. And one of the things she texted me one day was that she had a dream the night before, and she said, I saw Vesta, or a vision, whatever, and said, I saw Vesta set up in her bed, and she's going to be all right. And she says, I know that I know that I know.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. I kept that text, and a lot of times I would go back and I would just read them words. I know that I know that I know. And when she would call me maybe a day or two later, she would use she says, I know she's going to be all right. And our God's going to take care of it. So, and also, a lady, Vesta, a very good friend from our church, she was very diligent about calling, or a lot of times she wouldn't call, but she would text, and she would text Bible verses also, and words of encouragement. And I just knew both of those ladies, their relationships with the Lord, how strong it was, and I trusted that also. And they would even call, both of them, more than once, and say, put the phone up next to the ear to Vesta, let me pray with her. And they would pray with Vesta.
Yes.
And
so comforting.
We have family. Her sisters came out. They flew out. They both have jobs. They flew out 2 different times, each one. Spent a few days. Her mom was with us the whole time. Her mom wouldn't leave. And they were Christians, the whole family.
The kids came.
The kids came. But her sisters prayed with her, kept praying at her side. We stayed with her. Somebody stayed at her side the whole time. We took shifts or whatever it would be. We knew she wanted that, and I think she relayed that message before she lost her, when she went on trade, that she wanted us to stay with her. So we kind of run shifts on her some way or another. And I'm trying to hit we had the prayer and more prayer. I mean, that's all we had to go with. I mean, wasn't nothing any of us could do except for the God we serve. Sure. And we also had our motorcycle ministry group had called me and said, they gave me a time and a date. Will this be all right? Said we're all getting together at somebody's house, and we're all having a prayer vigil for, or we're having a prayer group for them. We're all praying. So they got called, and different ones that wanted to pray prayed with me and for her. They wanted to pray with her, but she wasn't feeling good at that time. We had to cancel that because Vesta just was one of them times she really wasn't having a good day. And we even provided us a place to stay. I've got a friend I ride bikes with in the Christian motorcycles ministry, and he's from Oklahoma. His sister and husband live about a half an hour away. His sister and brother-in-law shows up at the hospital, offers their house for us to stay in. We would go in at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they leave the door open. We'd walk through the house and go back to the bedrooms and take a shower or whatever we need to do. And, the one that have a place to rest and sleep. That was very beneficial, I tell you. And they're also a Christian family, and just how God opens doors and uses other people to bless us. So there's so many stories, and that's just a few of them. The people that were, and from the church, and people in the community, and other churches and people, names I didn't know because Vesta knew them through school, Painville community. So many cards, and that was a witness also.
Hundreds.
The nurses would say, "Well, you got more cards," and I tried to, and I said, "Well, this is from church, or this is whatever." Try to say, and I think it was a witness to people supporting her. The Christians supporting her.
Sure,
it sure was.
Sure. Well, that's the one thing you did mention in your testimonial, and I thought this was interesting, that that God had prepared you, you said, a long ago on your journey that you were facing here. Talk about that journey that began as a Sunday school teacher at Ekron Baptist Church.
Now that I can look back on this, you can see so many things. And, when they asked me to be the Sunday school teacher to the young married couples, I was like, I can't do this. No. But God convicted me.
You're a kindergarten teacher.
Yes, I told him, I said, I'm a kindergarten teacher. I can't.
A lot of young married couples are kindergartners.
Yeah, but I was like, I use my hands a lot, and they don't want to hear me use funny voices and get on the floor and flip around. But God convicted me, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And it has been, it has helped me more than anything, because, I was raised in a Christian home with Christian parents, and I knew all of the popular Bible verses. But when you're a Sunday school teacher, especially to young adults, you just can't wing it. Little ones, you could maybe not make it up, but, make it good. But I have to be prepared. So I have to research and use Bible commentaries, and I have to find out a lot of information when I teach Sunday school lessons. And as I was laying there, and remember, I couldn't communicate with anyone. I'm vented. So it's just God and I 24 hours a day. And I would reflect back on some of the lessons that had been taught. Besides the parting of the Red Sea, two other ones that I love. I love the one about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where they were thrown in the fire. The fire was so hot that the soldiers that threw them in this furnace were killed. And then the king looks up and he's like, I thought we only threw 3 people in, but there were 4. And he says, get them out. And when he got them out, there was not one speck of them that was burned, singed. They didn't even smell like smoke. And then the other Bible story I love is Daniel being thrown in the lion's den. When, normally when they were thrown in the lion's den, before they even hit the ground, they were gone. The lions ate them. But in this case, when David was put in there, he slept with the lions. God closed those lions' mouths and made them just like little kitty cats. And Daniel was saved. And, all these stories were of great faith and God's mighty power to save. And I would hang on to that, and I would just say, Vesta, Jesus' love never changes. He's held you. He says, I'm here. And I believe that, and I would hang on to that. And another thing that would get me through these days is that I would just sing in my mind songs. And my most favorite one was It Is Well With My Soul. And the one part that I would just sing over and over and over, and it would give me such comfort. One little verse of it says, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And that just, when I would sing that, I would say, it is. This is well with my soul. I didn't like where I was. It hurt. I wanted to be healed, but I knew it wasn't God's timing, and I was trusting Him minute by minute to get me through. And at my lowest point, Satan attacked me. And, a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but Satan is real. Mm-hmm. And when I was emotionally and physically at my lowest point, he was feeding me these lies, trying to tell me and convince me that God was not in control. And several months before I got sick, I had been a part of a women's Bible study called The Armor of God. And I hung on to this also. And what the study was, it taught the 7 scriptural armor that we need to stand against the devil. And let me read for you in Ephesians 6:11 through 13. It says, we need to put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the full armor of God, so that you will be able to resist in the evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm. And I would reflect back on that, and I would say, you have no power over me, Satan. And I would use these 7 pieces of armor to just tell him, get away, you are a liar. God is in control of this. So going through that Bible study, I had no idea months before that was going to help me. And in all the Sunday school lessons, each week it would talk about, as Christians, we're not immune from sorrow, from grief, from sadness. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean, everything's going to be rosy. It tells us, it says not if we're going to have struggles, but when we're going to have struggles. And I would always think, well, I haven't had anything yet. I would almost feel guilty after Sunday school class because some of them would share of difficulties that they would have. And I thought, well, I haven't really gone through anything bad. Well, I have now. I've got this testimony now. And it has shown me that God will provide. He will provide the grace and mercy to endure the hardships that we have to go through. And like you said earlier, when we pray the 23rd Psalm and it says, give us this day our daily bread, that is exactly what God did for me. He provided me with what I needed to get through every minute, through every hour, and through each day.
Well, Vesta, after 34 days in Oklahoma, it was finally decided that you were stable enough to be flown back to Louisville on Derby Day, actually.
On Derby Day.
Yeah.
I had my own private plane.
You spent over 50 days between Kindred Hospital and Fraser Rehab once you got back. But eventually you did come home. I can't imagine how it felt to finally be there.
Well, let me start with telling you when we got ready to leave Fraser Rehab. That day, Rote kept insisting that I put on this T-shirt. And it was a motorcycle T-shirt. And believe it or not, it was a picture of a motorcycle riding through the Red Sea. Again, God's little touch saying, girl, I've got you. And I was already dressed at this point, and I'm still, when I leave Fraser Rehab, I'm still, I can't do a whole lot for myself. And I just was telling him, no, it's too difficult to try to change clothes. But I could tell he was disappointed, but I didn't know why until I was loaded into the car at Fraser Rehab. We pull out on the street and turn a corner, and there is a motorcycle escort waiting. They escorted us all the way from Louisville to Brandenburg. We had motorcycles in front of us with lights flashing and motorcycles in the back flashing. And I'm sure people were wondering, who in the world is so important? And they're driving a black Ford Fusion. So that was how I got home. And then, I'd been in the hospital for almost 3 full months, and I hadn't been outside. And when I got home, I got to hear the sounds of birds singing. And it was the most beautiful sound. And I remember looking up and seeing the clouds. And I'm like, they're so white. And the sky is so blue. And I was like, the trees and the flowers. I mean, everything was so vibrant. And I could feel the wind blowing on me. And it was things that I'd taken for granted. And now I truly appreciated them. And Greg, the community support was absolutely overwhelming. Before I'd gone to the hospital a couple months before, a tree had fallen on our house, and a group of people came over. They cut that tree up. They cleaned up everything so Rote wouldn't have to worry about it. My front yard was landscaped, and flowers were planted in there. I mean, more beautiful than anything I could have ever done. Money. People gave money because my bathroom needed to be remodeled so it would be handicap accessible. A group of ladies came into my house. They cleaned my entire house, including my windows and my refrigerator. And, I was so embarrassed. My living room and my hallway were painted. Food was brought in. And, like we said before, I received hundreds and hundreds of cards. And, my mom has even said to me, she's like, I wish I lived in a community like yours. She said, where I live, neighbors don't even know each other. And she said, you could see the love of Jesus from everyone in your community. And she said, that's where you live, where neighbors still help out neighbors. And, I can never thank everybody enough. And my family and my friends that spent the countless hours sitting by my side the entire 3 months that I was in the hospital. I mean, I am so, so blessed that I'm loved. And the love that was shown to my family, it's beyond anything that I can even comprehend. And I just want to thank everyone for their prayers, because I could feel those prayers covering me the entire time.
Well, Vesta, you recently had another homecoming. You took another special trip again, and that was back to Oklahoma to visit with doctors, with nurses, caregivers who had been by your side for over a month. This had to be a special homecoming, too.
Oh, going back to Oklahoma and seeing my doctors and nurses, that was my goal. The whole time when I got home, I would tell Rote, I would say, I'm going to get well enough because I want to walk into that ICU unit and say, I'm here. Look at me, I walked in. So that was my goal. And a couple of weeks ago, Rote did take me back to the hospital, Integris Baptist in Oklahoma City. And I remember I got off the elevator and I thought I was going to be okay. And there's a real long hallway, a glass hallway that you go in to the ICU unit on the 6th floor. And at the end of that hallway is a desk. And Rote was walking, and I just sort of stopped and started getting a little emotional. But I could see this one male nurse that I absolutely loved. And he said he looked at Rote and he thought, I know him. I know that guy. But Rote has whiskers now, a beard, and he couldn't see me because I had fallen back a little bit. But then when Rote turned around and grabbed me and said, it's going to be okay, come on, and he pulled me up, he saw me, and we ran to each other, almost like a movie. We were running, and we embraced, and we hugged, and we cried, and I guess we were making so much noise in the hallway. Other nurses started coming out, and we were praising God right there. I mean, it was incredible, and I loved it. And my neurologist came, and she talked to us in the hallway, and she shared with us, well, the first thing she did after we hugged, she grabbed both of my arms and pulled my sleeves all the way up to my elbows, and she just started feeling all over me. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm seeing if your muscle's coming back. I mean, she was trying to see what's going on. She said, we have been talking about your case. She said, I didn't think I treated you with the right medication. And she said, it has just bothered me. And she said, I just keep talking to other doctors about your case. And I said, look, you did the right thing. And, she was just feeling me. And I told her, I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. She had me take my shoes off, wiggle my toes. It was just wonderful. And she told me, I didn't know if she was a Christian or not. And she looked at me and she said, God used me as a tool to help heal you. She said, Jesus Christ helped in this. And she shared with Rote and I, she said that she had feared that I had the worst strand of GBS there was, where the nerves are actually severed, and she truly thought when I left that I would be paralyzed for life. And she also shared with us that she had feared that if anything else had happened to me, that I probably would not have made it.
Any pneumonia or anything.
And this is pretty cool. At the end of May or the 1st of June, the hospital always has a big gala. This year, the gala is going to be neurologically themed, and they have asked Rote and I to come back to this formal gala, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But they've asked us to come back, and they said that if we do, they're going to do a story on me. And I keep thinking, wow, what another opportunity for me to give God the glory.
Yeah. Rote, you going to shave the beard off?
Probably not.
Well, Vesta, other than the point in your testimonial when you felt Jesus put his arms around you, I remember you stated at the end of your testimonial that you, after all you had been through, all the pain, you said that you would not trade 1 second of the pain and the suffering that you'd experienced in exchange for the spiritual growth and getting to feel Jesus hold you in his arms. Is that your message for all of us here today listening? And how important is that for you to share that with the world today?
I thank God every single day for allowing this to happen to me. He didn't cause it. He didn't do it. But he allowed it to happen, and he was never surprised by anything that I went through. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that through this, my faith was going to be increased. I mean, he made it clear that he was with me and my family through this entire journey. And I need to tell you this because I'm going to tell you a couple of things that just showed me that God was with me the entire time. It wasn't until I could communicate again, because I couldn't for 7 weeks, that one of my sisters shared with me that there were 2 songs that she would listen to over and over and over again that would give her hope and peace when she thought that maybe I wasn't going to make it. And the first song is called Even If, and it's by Mercy Me. Now, I'd never heard this song before, and this is one little verse of it. It says, I know the sorrow and I know the hurt would all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is with you alone. Greg, that's exactly what I was praying every single day to God. If you will just say the word, I'll be okay. But if not, my hope is in you alone. And the end of that song is, it is well with my soul. And that's the hymn that I would sing over and over. There was another song that my sister would listen to, and it's called The God Who Sees, and it's by Kathy Lee Gifford and Nicole C. Mullen. And listen to this. It says, then he speaks in gentle whispers, and he softly calls her name. He folds his arms around her, and he holds her, and she'll never be the same. Greg, those are the words right there. Jesus held me. Again, I had never heard of this song. It's just incredible to me that those 2 songs are what my sister was holding on to. And while she was listening to them, that's exactly what was going on with me. And, I mean, I have just several stories. Just, my daughter-in-law said she had a dream. And she said she dreamed that I was sitting up in bed and just carrying on with the doctors and giving them a hard time. And that is exactly what happened in Fraser Rehab. But she told me when they flew me to Kindred, that's the first thing she told me when she grabbed me. She said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. I had this dream, and I know you're going to be okay. My daughter Lauren, she decided that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Her last day was Friday. I was hospitalized on that Monday. And Lauren has said she would probably had to have quit her job to stay by my side. She was the one in charge of scheduling everybody. She kept a journal. Lauren was a warrior on making sure that I got everything that I needed. After I got home, I was suffering a little bit of like a form of PTSD because of the traumatic experience. So I went to my pastor, our pastor right now at Akron Baptist, and I was telling him about how Psalms 91 was prayed over me every day. And he looked at me and he said, I have something for you. He pulls out a book. And it's the book, Psalm 91, God's Umbrella of Protection. Don't tell me that these are coincidences. There are no coincidences with God. God was there. And Greg, I've never felt like I really ever had a testimony that anybody would really want to listen to. But boy, do I have one now. And I just, getting Guillain-Barre was all of God's plan. And like I said, he wasn't surprised by anything. I thank him every day. And I'm praying to him every day, God, whatever you want to come out of this, make me aware of it. And I know that part of this testimony with you is part of that plan. You know, before I was not as brave. People knew I was a Christian, but I didn't boldly. This has changed me. My faith has grown tremendously. And, you know, I have to tell people, Jesus held me in his arms. And I want them to know that Jesus is our only hope. He is the Son of God. And only by believing in him can we get to heaven. And, you know, I knew that I had faith. And I knew I was going to heaven. But Greg, now I know that I know that I know.
Well, that's beautiful. Vesta and Rote, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being with us today. And to all your church community at Akron Baptist who has supported you and all the community here.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are so happy that you are where you are in your life today. And most importantly, thank you for sharing that story, because it is a story of the unending love that God has for us. He is by our side every day. And we wish you the best of luck, and we'll continue to pray for your continued strength. And but more importantly, I think the thanks is the number of people that you will allow them to turn to Jesus in their times of struggle, in their times of pain, and in their times of weakness. Know that you can be a big help to them too.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Greg.
And this was our prayer, that whatever is said does give him the glory.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
And somebody out there that wants to take time to listen to this, maybe somebody needs this story to strengthen them when they get ready to hit that big bump in their life, if they're not in it right now already.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. You've been listening to Meade County Catholic Radio Talk Show Discussions. I'm Deacon Greg Bevin. We now return to our regularly scheduled programming, Now in Progress.
Not to mix parts trade, stay you mix, stay you. Not to mix parts trade.